And now I will ask the last speaker in this section, Reinhard Braun. He is a Graz-based author and curator in the field of photography and new media. Reinhard Braun was a curator of
Steirischer Herbst.
Thank you. Festival in Graz. In 2011, he became the editor-in-chief at Camera Austria. Reinhard will introduce a broader understanding of the studied relation between text and photography, or as Reinhard calls it in his lecture, the relation in between discourse and document. Text and image will become linked, as it seems like one cannot exist without the other. The floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon. Yeah, thanks for the, I hope this is okay. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be in Prague again after quite some time. I will not, I'm afraid I will not present any theory. I'm not a theorist, I'm not an historian of photography. Basically, my approach is developed out of an editorial and curatorial practice. I hope some of you know that we are publishing a magazine on contemporary photography since 1980 in Graz, and we run in parallel to this an exhibition space. So there's an ongoing engagement with critical issues related to contemporary photography since quite a while. And out of this engagement with art itself, some questions arose, and you're always constantly confronted with a lot of questions related to photography. And I might say that the short presentation I will give is basically about documentary photography. So we do not get rid of the documentary at all. It has been brought back into the debate throughout the last years again and again about the documentarism within the art field. There has been published a quite influential book by Hito Steyer, for instance, which is called The Color of Truth, where she is engaging with different forms of the documentary. So when I say the photographic image, or when I'm speaking of images, you might keep in mind that it would be basically, except maybe Natalie Czech, about the documentary issue. So, and the brief abstract I sent to the organizers beforehand, this round table, was going back to a very famous phrase that was coined by Bertolt Brecht, that you know, an image of the Kruppwerke tells us nothing about the situation of the workers, about the economics, about the social system that this kind of industrialism is working in, and so on and so forth. So there has always been a kind of a text accompanying the images to tell us what this image is all about anyhow. So and this it's also a Benjamin idea that there has always been a caption around that tells us what we see in the images. So and you can find the red thread of this controversial debate on the relationship between the documentary image and something as a text or a cultural text throughout the last decades. You know, it appears in a kind of ambiguity that Roland Barthes also is kind of constructing. It's about the punctum and the studium, two different modes of reading or getting attracted by the images that puts us in different modes of encountering with the image. And you can also find it in very more recent debates. You know, it's from W.J.T. Mitchell, from where I bought this quote, that for him the photographic image is not only something that is visual. It's not only defined by visibility. There is also another layer. It's always entangled in the kind of cultural texts that are important for the images. And so from that you find it also in Deleuze, when he's asking not what's how to understand what an image shows, not to critique what is shown within an image, but how to get into the image, you know, how to relate to the image, how to share a kind of a common ground in encountering with the image. That means that it's not something that is defined by an artificial visibility that is totally different from, you know, the body of thinking, of the sensual apparatus of the human body. So it is about, it's also about this relationship of what might be the idea of text regarding to the image. So, and from that, I have no theory, but it's more a strategy, you know. It's a strategy in dealing with contemporary photography, and we might maybe start to skip to the first work I'd like to show. It's more a strategy, you know. It's maybe basing on two main tasks. The one is, you know, how to denaturalize the photographic image within our totally spectacular visual culture. You know, it's. I mean, it has been said for 20 years now. I don't have to go into detail of this debate, but we are surrounded by images. Everything we know about the world is about the world, about our social communities, about what we think about our identity, you know, what we dress, how we look like, you know, and all these kinds of things are very much shaped by different encounters in different circumstances with photographic image, not only photographic, but still photographic images. So how to denaturalize what we are seeing, you know, that which can be seen, to bring the image into a very alienated state of mind, maybe to have the possibility to have a different look and a different relationship. So it's about also a parallel reading of more a political lecture that shaped our work throughout the last few years with engaging with two big exhibition projects, for instance, in this notion of the community today, which is of course very much related to ideas of politics of identity, you know, which is issue in the debates on how community can be drafted, you know, how there could be developed another utopia of community that is not depending on identity we share, not of common things we share, but that is depending on just a very neutral being with, you know. But anyhow, from this identity politics, the idea how is it possible to de-identify an image with itself, you know, what might occur, you know, what strategies you could put on into images. And the third one is this idea that, continuing with this idea that photographic images is not only determined by visibility, but there is always a kind of a text inscribed in it, you know. So this also means that maybe there is something intrinsic to photographic images. I mean, maybe it sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory that there are hidden texts in images could be decoded encore trop. But what if we think of that there is something intrinsic to the image that cannot be controlled by the image itself or by the visibility that we usually address to images? So this is a kind of a twist, you know, in seeing what how you can shift the discourse that that photographic images has always been included in, and these discourses had always to do with the relationship between the documentary and the real, you know, the documentary and the truth. It had always been about authenticity. We know all these debates. They have been very important, but at some point it seems that they are becoming a bit fruitless, you know, since our notions of what is real has been changing also parallel to this very much. So how can you grab the documentary out of this being kept entangled in questions of, is this real what we are seeing? Is this, how is the image connected to some idea of reality? So, and it is also then about doubting this paradigm of visibility has another reference, which I will briefly mention, and then I will talk a bit about the artworks, and maybe it becomes more clear what these chaotic ideas may lead to. When you remember a very influential essay by Ellen Sekula called The Traffic in Photographs, and a big part of this very seminal essay was donated to this exhibition project brought about by Edward Steichen in the 1950s called The Family of Man. And we saw the book yesterday in an exhibition at Fotograf Gallery, I guess. Where he's very deeply also criticizing this idea that if the documentary is basically related to visibility, there is no cultural text inscribed in the image. There is nothing that would automatically lead to a difference. That is rooted in cultural, social, political, economic, whatsoever differences. So that means that there is the possibility that the documentary, the image, could be a universal language. And the whole Family of Man exhibition was about this. Using photography as a global human language without saying, an image tells more than 1,000 words. That's the idea. And what Sekula does is that he tries to also show that this idea of visibility is also a historic product of specific political discourses that has taken place throughout the 19th century. And one of it is that the photography was always part of a very universalized, from the perspective of at that time colonial global political situation. It was a project of it was an important part of a bigger project of producing knowledge production, of producing knowledge. This is the core of modernism is determined by making visible, identify, classify. To have this possibility to bring things in order. So maybe we have to kind of, pathetically speaking, free the documentary from this neutral, which is turned out not to be neutral, from this neutral idea that being shaped by mere visibility, But on the other hand, that it is a cultural practice, it is a cultural technique, so it is very naturally entangled in other fields of cultural production. And what we see here now is a work by Sven Jone, an exhibition. We did an exhibition project from June to September this year, including a book. And this is one image of a 5-part series. It's called Ship Cancellation. All 5 images you see, they're quite big. They are kind of 160 by 120 meters, quite big. In all of them you see seascapes, and it's not readable, but what you see over the horizon is what you can read down there: Empire, Timor Sea, and then the geographical position. So where this image pretends to be taken, somewhere in the Timor Sea at some geographical coordinates. And this is the place where the ship Empire sank, and what you can read that is also imprinted in the image itself, it's this kind of gray, shady part that you see is the story you can read. It's the only survivor that tells the story about this catastrophe that the Empire sank, So this is a project about malfunctions, about the modern as also an history of dysfunction and catastrophes. So he's always interested in these moments, being it cultural, being it socially, that show some breakdown of systems. Anyhow, we can keep this in mind, and we go to the next, please. I'm not sure if you can see, but the background of this text, there is a blurred portrait. It's a series it's called Grandmasters of Deception. I think it's 8 or 9, no, six works, where he's telling again some stories. This is about a man who built himself a rocket spaceship in his garden, and he spent there for more than 60 days, and he held lectures about Soviet plans to conquer space, all these space programs. So he was talking about the utopias of industrialization and this modern idea of expansion, And he was living there. And he found this story in a local newspaper, and other stories are about people that invented some new sports, like a specific form of chess, and they claim to be the Olympic champions in this new sport. That was a total fiction and is an invention by themselves. So these are also stories about where people kind of fall out of a social community and a social order. And next, please. So this is the most recent work we showed in Graz. This is our exhibition space in Graz. It's a 38-part series. He did it in Greece last year from July to October. And he was visiting, places we know as tourist places like Delos, Olymp, or some nice Greek island, but also a lot of small towns in the Peloponnese that are not, typical places to go for tourists. And it's a very randomly produced series of images, and if you go to the next, please. And they're all images of the nightly sky, and that's it, It's always, you see the sky, and the series is called The Darker the Sky, the Brighter the Stars, something like that. So only when it's very dark you can see the stars very clearly on the sky. And on the lower part of the image and covering a part of the photography, it's not added, but it's covering a part of the original photography. You can read those texts. They're all about people he met, stories he's been told, what happened. It's kind of a diary-like short text, And of course we know Greece is an example of the crisis in Europe. And he was going there as an artist, pretending to do a kind of a reportage, and is bringing only images from the sky that could be taken anywhere, as the sea cancellation images, because of course it's a lie. I mean, it was not taken in the Timor Sea or in the Chinese Sea. It's just a random photographs he took on a trip from I guess Hamburg to New York on the Atlantic Ocean. So this raises the question about the relationship between the text and the images, and a very specific relation, because the text doesn't tell too much about the situation in Greece. It's very superficial talks he had, and the images show nothing about the disastrous situation in Greece, and it is a catastrophe situation, because Katarina Gregas, a Greece curator that curated a show recently in Graz for a festival that was mentioned, it's a humanitarian crisis. 25% of the people in Greece fall out of any social system. They don't have any health insurance anymore. They don't even have electricity, or they start, it's becoming a problem to provide them with water. So there is a humanitarian catastrophe in Greece going on. And, this is a work that is also very critical to this documentary, because you see nothing of them. So he's claiming that, or he's questioning, could you go to Greece and bring images home that tell something about what's going on there? So what's the capability of the documentary nowadays? And this constant relation with text, and the text, they do not describe what can be seen in the images. They're telling a completely different story. But they're always part of his work. So he's working really in this showing that there is an opposition between the image and the text, and they don't explain each other, but you have to think of maybe a different relationship. Next, please. Next. I think I have to speed up a bit. I'm running out of time. The next artist I want to show is Martin Beck. an Austrian artist living in New York most of the time, but also teaching at the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. I mean, he's not a photographer at all, but he was part of this Communitas exhibition I briefly mentioned in 2000, and no, it's not 10, it's 2011, the exhibition project. And so he was not working with photography at all, relating to this issue of the community. But this is a work that is focusing on this alternative culture that started to become very prominent in the early 60s, the commune movement, and with being Drop City, started in 1963 or 65, being one of the first, you know, these alternative communes, you know, this critique of civilization, going somewhere in the nowhere, and, you know, inventing the social, the communal, and everything, and also the economic possibilities, you know, from the scratch. Alternative models of communal living. And what you see here is basically text. You see on the left on the wall, this is a Google map description how to get from San Francisco, who is the famous part of town, Haight-Ashbury, to go to, if you would go to Drop City, you would have to take this route. This is how to get there, the directions work. The Incomplete Parks is the book works. He has been collecting a lot of books that was either produced from an outside perspective, you know, sociological books, psychoanalytical literature that was kind of produced on this movement, but also a lot of books that have been produced by members of this commune to kind of document, you know, these new social ideas. And the third work, and the next, please, this is called Headlines, because there has been a lot of we would call them fanzines, magazines, cheap magazines being produced that circulated between the communes and between people that were interested in this movement, produced by cheap. And what Martin Beck did, I hope you can still hear me. And what Martin Beck did is that he was collecting out of these magazines these headlines. So this is a kind of aesthetic representation, and a representation through issues that were so important that they were used as headlines. So this is a form of representation that is only related to text. So it's a kind of maybe, but it's maybe inventing a second order image that could be added to this text. What would be a question? So for him, the images, that because there are a lot of very well-known images around, we know images of the specific landscapes where they have been founding this kind of new communes. So, but he refused to go there. So Sven Jone is still going there and bringing some images back home, but Martin Beck don't even go there. He's attempting the question of the representation of this political movement and this social movement in very different ways. And I will only give you a very brief insight into the third artist I choose to present this afternoon. It's Natalie Czech. This is the first page of her contribution in the Kamera Austria International magazine. And you see an image where you see part of a book where some words are marked. And these marked words you can read as some poems from authors like, I don't know, Jack Kerouac, French authors. So what she does is she's kind of finding, and this is maybe the part of the conspiracy theory, so she's really finding other texts within existing texts, or she's implementing different narratives, different meanings that are based on text into existing texts. And she is then showing this as images, you know. She's basically working as a conceptual photographer, but still as a photographer. And this is a text by Jens Asthoff, and Jens Asthoff had to use, it was her script, so to say. She gave him a list of words he had to use in the first paragraph of his text. because she made out of this magazine page that we published, she made another work, you know, so she had the possibility to find the poem she initially inscribed herself. But she has different strategies. Next one. It's very much about this finding text, you know, by chance. You can skip to the next. And then she also, you know, this is a poem. So the poem that is produced by the word she marks is a poem about a bouquet, you know. So the image is representing the content of the poem itself, you know. And she's also, sometimes she's photographing pages she previously marked, but sometimes she's photographing pages and then marking the photography. So the question she leaves us with is this now, is this the photography of, is it the photography of a text, so it is basically the text in the center of her work, or is it the photography, the medium that she's basically engaging this entanglement of text and words. So this has been described in the text by Jens Asthoff also as a kind of parasitic meaning that she finds or inscribed text. And so I would like to end with this idea and generalize this idea of some parasitic meaning, or that is intrinsically and constitutively part of not only documentary images, but mostly maybe documentary image. So to find these not a layer, but a kind of a blind spot that is inscribed in the images or part of the images that the image itself cannot reach and can be somehow made visible. As Sven Jone showed us an image of a seascape where he inscribed the incident of a sinking ship into this image. You know, this information is not in the image. There are a lot of things that cannot be depicted, but that somehow maybe have also taken into consideration when we think of representation as also a kind of a political practice. And so this would be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.